So we'll see how that turns out. It's like, you do glitter, I want glitter, I'm coming back for glitter.
Tammy, is Karen coming? Calling meeting to order. The regular reading of the Charter Revision Commission, October 9, 2024. Welcome, everybody. Ms. Gillis, may we have the roll call?
Jennifer Cochran,
Here.
Ann Hoganson, Jennifer Knack-Schneider, Amy Metz,
Here.
Foster Neal,
Present.
Brian Polka,
Here.
Stacy Weaver.
Good. For the approval of the agenda, I'm going to suggest, if I may, that we move under old business, that we move the process check to after we're through with new business. We want to make sure that we're able to get through our chapters tonight, and then I have a few things to talk about
We're moving it to after.
after new business.
We want to do Ann.
Oh, we should do that now. We have a resolution to excuse Ann from the meeting.
Do you need to move that? I will move that.
Second.
Yeah. So do you guys follow that one?
Cochran,
Yes.
Metz,
Yes.
Neal,
Present.
Polka.
Yes.
Okay, yes or no, Foster?
Yes.
Okay, and Weaver.
Keep asking for presents, I never get them.
Yes, Knack-Schneider.
Okay. That
You're not
resolution,
10, you're not gonna get any?
that resolution is passed. Thank you. Okay, our next item is to approve the minutes of September 11. Are there any additions, corrections, deletions? Need a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Do we roll call? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Minutes are approved. Thank you. Okay, next item on our agenda is to look at the interest indicator for James Brown. James, do you prefer James, Jim?
It doesn't really matter, either one,
Either one.
whatever you're comfortable with.
Interest indicators don't really tell us a whole lot, other than where you live and what you served in this year. So, by way of introducing yourself to the group, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in serving on this commission?
Moved here 3 years ago. Lived in Florida most of my life. Retired. Wanted to just get involved in something. I enjoy walking through the neighborhoods and the parks and things like that, and I really love this little city. And when it was mentioned the other day, about meeting people for Heritage Commission, I thought that would be something to be a part of. I've not been involved government-wise, but government buildings. I've been involved in them.
Okay. Do I understand correctly that you were just approved for Park and Rec at
Yes.
the commission meeting on Monday?
I do it tomorrow.
Is he okay to, did he have to get special permission from the commission?
You did Foster.
Is that because one's elected and one's volunteer? Is that because one's elected and one's volunteer? No, they're not volunteer, they're both volunteer.
Yeah, they're both. Jim's not elected either.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
No, I didn't run for anything.
What do you know about charter revision right now, other than what you observed at the last meeting?
That's all I know really about it.
Do you have any questions for us before we vote?
No, I just have to really kind of just slow read. Brian was able to, so I could at least just kind of look at some of that. Very wordy.
Do any of the other commission members have any questions that you want to pose to Jim?
Motion?
May I have a motion to accept the interest indicator and have Mr. Brown join us?
Motion to accept James Brown as part of our commission.
For a second?
Second.
All in favor, or do we roll call? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very well, thank you. Welcome to the charter.
That's what he told me the last time, too.
I'll give Ms. Oldclough.
Yes, before we go any further.
Yep. Okay, we're gonna give you your oath of office. I'm gonna give you your official book. Official book. Okay, you're gonna raise your right hand, and you from there.
I, James Brown, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the City of Rapids, so help me God.
You go ahead and sign. We also have an ethics policy.
Okay.
that I'm gonna give you. Sign here.
All right.
This one and this one, and you're all set.
No, you're good. I take up a lot of space.
Okay, moving on, we have any communications? Sandy? No communications to speak of? Okay, item 7, committee reports. That would be Public Outreach Committee. Brian, do you want to say anything about the Good Neighbors event?
We went to the Good Neighbors outing at the library and passed out a few of our bookmarks. Everybody needs to take some and pass some out. The turnout wasn't as great as we had hoped. There was basically more vendors than there was participants. Yeah. So, and we were there, we got our name, people saw us, so
We
we
did
got it
have,
started.
we did have an opportunity to talk with a few people, some newbies, new folks who have just moved into town.
Yep.
It was really cool, part from the charter was seeing so many young families. Kids were just too adorable for words. But we did give out bookmarks, we made people, we had some exposure, it was good as far as that's concerned. I think we kind of chatted among ourselves that one of the possible problems with the attendance was the time that they were holding it, which was 4 o'clock to 7 in the afternoon on a Saturday. But be that as it may, it was still good, and we did get some exposure, and we did have a chance to talk to some folks, so that's a good thing. I will just give you a quick break. I don't know if did I tell you last time about Rotary? Ann and I went to the Rotary Club. Had a very good meeting, had some good questions from them. They were very attentive. It was a full house. I'm still trying to get hold of the president of GFWC, the General Federation of Women's Clubs President, Sue Johnson. I would like to get on their agenda. Still moving forward with radio spots and so forth. What I'm hoping to do, and once we look at the survey, if we can come to some consensus on finalizing the survey, as soon as we get that up, then I want to hit the circuit and let people know that it's there. We want as many people as possible to know about it, why it's important, and how to get there. So, I have to say, we showed Rotary our website and what was available on it, and I think they were pretty impressed with it. Why did you say so, Liz? Okay, survey review. Ann is unable to be here this evening, but I think she sent the address for where we can look at it, Stace.
Yep, it is up right now.
Ah, okay. I think, did anyone have any comments on this front part? Let me go straight to the questions.
I don't think we had any questions. questions on the front part.
I think we were good on the front part. I believe we talked about this in terms of the residency, and did indicate that this is not going to be, we're going to hide this, or it's going to be dealt with privately, so that, we're not blasting they're not blasting their email all over Kingdom Come. So, okay, anything on this? Otherwise, we can keep moving down.
No, I keep moving down.
Okay, and I think we talked about this at our last meeting. Okay, next two questions are open-ended, but I'm assuming that what we're going to do is be collating the frequency of different answers to see what arises as a pattern of consensus among the community. So, those two.
It'd be a great problem if it was difficult to go through. We had so many answers.
So many responses. Yes, I know, I'm what they call a cockeyed optimist, and I'm holding to hope that we get a good representative sampling anyway. I hope. Okay, so the first question has to do with residency requirement for city board members. Is that the first one? Yeah, okay. And this is a question following Brian's suggestion about non-residents who may own property or business within the city to serve on city boards where state statutes permit. That's pretty straightforward. Yes, no, don't know, would like more information, or other. Any comments on that one? Next one. This is the term limits question. Okay. The question is, do you approve of a revision to allow election to a fourth consecutive term for mayors in this situation? I'm gonna guess that we may get a substantial number of I don't knows. Need more information on that one, but are you okay with this question as it is worded?
Well, wait, okay, when it says currently, no city officer may serve more than 3. Now, right now, they can only serve 2, correct?
Say that again?
3.
I don't think the
Any
mayor
city
can serve
officer
more
can
than
serve 3 consecutive terms, 12 years.
So the mayor can re-up 3 times.
So long as they've never been a commissioner or haven't been a commissioner
Oh, yeah.
in a
Okay,
previous
Exactly.
term that was consecutive.
okay.
Right.
We wouldn't be allowing a fourth. I don't think this is actually clear. We wouldn't be allowing,
This is hard to write, so.
I know,
hard to
we
write.
wouldn't be allowing a mayor to serve 4 consecutive terms as mayor.
Well, and we discussed not allowing a mayor to serve more than 2 consecutive terms. I remember that conversation as well.
Right now, he can do 12, which is what that's saying, you can do more than 12. Right?
Yeah, what this, the problem,
Why
the
is the
problem
reason
with
why
this-
we're asking for longer?
Well, the example would be, Ann, who's not here, her father served as mayor for 1 term, right? And generally probably would have been elected to serve for another term. But because he had previously served 2 terms as a commissioner immediately prior to being elected as mayor, he was term limited by the 3 consecutive terms.
Okay.
And so he couldn't go on to serve as mayor for a second term even. So it's kind of like, are we pushing out good candidates because
Yeah.
of term limits when they actually only served 1 term in the capacity of mayor?
Right.
The sticking point being
It's
that
unfortunate
the
they
term
ever
limits
combined
are
them.
combined between commissioners and mayor. So if you were a commissioner,
And
it's
you
the-
can't separate?
Tammy, well, that's the question, but Tammy
understand.
raises a good point, which I did not think about, and I'm not sure if you guys did either. We're making an assumption that a mayor would have served some time on the commission. But that's not necessarily the case, as
Right.
with our current mayor, never served any time on the commission. And so what she's asking is, could a mayor then
Serve 12
serve 12 years
as mayor.
as mayor, assuming, they are elected?
or even it would, given the way the question is worded, if I were to be standing there trying to make sense of this, not knowing, I would think that it was suggesting that a mayor could serve 4 terms.
Yeah. The thing is, we can't,
Could,
you know, trying to
could we-
disentangle all the possible combinations.
Could we, I know, could we write it so the term limit on the city commission was 12 years and then for mayor it was 8 years? Could we separate that?
I think in the separating will help clarify it one way or the
Look at
other.
my frustration, I broke my pen. I'm enraged.
No, don't go there.
Yeah, right.
It's easier if you separate it.
It is easier, and it seems like it would be easier to put on a survey so people would understand it.
Yeah, I
It'd be
think,
a lot less confusing.
I think that,
That's why I had to ask you that.
yeah, the first sentence, because we know what it means, does some of the work that we're talking about, but I don't know that it does enough work to get voters to understand the situation, right? Like, that's the sticky point, is that, because the commission, the city commission tried to do this and put it out to a vote previously in years past, and it failed, but I think largely because the public did not understand
I can see that.
the
Yeah,
issue at
I
hand.
didn't understand.
You know,
And so people's
Last
gut
time-
instinct is like, you wanna give more, you wanna extend term limits, no.
Right, right.
And it's not really the situation.
the reason we wanted to separate, or we talked about separating commissions, the commissioner terms from the mayor terms, was simply even though the mayor is a one-fifth of the commission,
Right.
is because the duties of the commission are different from the duties.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of overlap, but they're not. The mayor is a bigger
The mayor is,
position.
you know, the mayor is the chair of the commission, and they run the meeting, but the duties of the mayor are different from those of the city commissioners. I'm not sure if there's any prohibition for us to suggest to just 3 terms, keep the 3 terms for commissioners, but separate the mayor into two 4-year terms.
They could all do a total of 12 years
So
currently,
no,
no matter what capacity you're in, 12 years. That's what I want.
And we don't have the people willing to run for office. We don't have, it's not like we have people busting down the door to be on committees and run for commission and run for mayor.
sure.
What about this guy sitting next to me?
Yeah.
Next election.
Nobody knows me. from
Now you're
Adam.
running for
I know
mayor.
about 3
You never
people
even
in
saw that coming, did ya?
I mean, he just joined, like us and the Parks Board, like, that's people beating down the door.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, sure.
I'm just saying.
Sure.
Don't discount our new
Sure.
member.
I'm not. I'm so glad you're here. But I'm saying,
You're right.
like, I didn't volunteer to be on this. I got a phone call asking me to be on it. I am like, I am one who reads the paper and goes, oh, I'm glad someone's taking care of that. Thank you.
Somebody guilted you, huh?
Yes.
I wasn't the one that made
I
the
know,
phone
I know,
call.
I know. I just can't say no to her.
Stace, you got any thoughts on this?
I don't know that we're gonna get information that's actually useful to us with it as written.
That's the thing.
Well, how do you feel about if we follow any suggestion and write it
2
3
separate.
terms for commissioners, 2 terms for mayor? Now, I mean, if the mayor wanted to run for commission, that could be their 3rd term, but just 2 terms serving as mayor.
Yeah, I mean, I think the hardest part is the beginning, is laying out the confusing situation of what is currently here, and the proposal is less hard to write, because people, so long as they know
Nobody knows that. Nobody's gonna know
the
that.
situation,
Yeah.
then the proposal will make sense, right? But getting them to know, being able to describe the situation concisely and coherently, I think is our biggest challenge with this question.
Yeah.
If we were to go forward with the changes that we're proposing, would we be okay with someone serving as a city commissioner for 12 years and then immediately after switching to the mayor role and doing that for 8 years?
That's the question, right?
Right.
I would personally be okay with
I
that,
would be okay with it, I wouldn't.
but I don't know that everyone would be.
So that would
But that would
be,
be easier way to word it. than
It would be
the way this is
worded
now.
very clearly and you could
Yeah.
easily distinguish as long as we don't care about a joint.
I don't know in any other
Executive term.
circumstance, and maybe that does exist, but where they combine term limits to all things you can run for, like,
Right.
I don't know any other circumstance that exists.
No, I'm not aware of any.
It would be interesting if somebody said on the survey, if you did separate it and you phrased it that way, 3. Somebody would actually catch and ask, well, you know.
Wouldn't that be fun, though, if somebody did
and
catch that and
somebody
wrote
would
that?
actually read that.
I'd be
and
so
do that.
excited.
Yeah.
I'd be so excited.
That would mean that somebody.
All the people who showed up at our meeting last time, so excited.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, you're supposed to be at that one.
Right, all of them.
All of them, yes.
I'm guessing that we can't make a multiple choice. I'm pretty sure we can't give it a write-in option.
No.
Like yes, no, I don't know, other, maybe there is an other that people can write in. I have concerns, or I would support 2 and 2 terms, right? So that could be valuable information for us on this question where they don't wanna answer yes, they don't wanna answer no, they don't wanna answer I don't know. They have an answer, but we're not giving them the space to put it in.
That was an interesting, say 2 and 2, that, say that, would give more direction. Sit down and look at it, this is what the people are more talking
Also, I don't know whether it's possible for people to choose more than one option, so they might say no and other, right? Or yes and other, or I don't know and other.
But if you separate them and say commission 1, another question about mayor.
I do think you have to separate them, because otherwise it's,
I think you'll get more concrete answers, because then you'll,
Add a completely separate question.
yes,
One question on
city council.
city council, 3 years, or 3 terms, and then one question at mayor at 2 terms. And just leave them
and then like
completely apart.
Foster said, put in another, and if they wanna say, well, how about city commission for 2 terms? Okay,
I think
they have an opinion.
the other thing that's important that I've pointed out before is when this came to the voters in the past, it was referendum that we were voting on. What's the right
I
word?
think it was probably an amendment to the charter at the time.
Right, so we were voting on one specific amendment of the charter, and so everyone read that one amendment on their ballot
Right.
and made a decision.
Right.
Now, we're trying to, they're only gonna be voting on the entire charter.
Yeah.
So they're not actually gonna see this
Yeah.
detail when they go to vote, right?
Right.
So it's important for us not to get too twisted on this, so much as that we're putting forward the charter that the community wants us to put forward.
Yeah, I mean, whether we include something, change this in the charter, it depends on what we get back largely from the public. The last time, we didn't alert the public with sufficient time, and all they saw was 20 years.
Yeah.
And they're, like, almost the unanimous reaction was, no way. Are you kidding
I can
me?
see that.
No way. It's interesting, I've had one email in the CRC mail so far. And interestingly, it was on this topic, and the individual said, we don't need term limits, we have elections to do that. And that's another piece of this pie, that, there are people who don't think we need term limits, because if we do our elections properly, if enough people come out, of course, that's a whole nother conversation, but
Sometimes I don't know that it's the people coming out, it's the people not wanting to run, because they don't like to run against an incumbent. So if you only have one person,
Right.
then you really don't have a choice, so is your election really working? No.
It's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, we say that, but in theory, it doesn't really work out that well. If you have no one to choose from.
Well, you consider, we have, 7,700 people in town, we have, 5,000 registered voters, and routinely, about 12 to 14% of those vote.
A lot of that
And
is,
fewer percent
a lot of that is kind of
want to stand for
muddied up
office.
with the college students too.
Right.
They leave, but they don't register to vote somewhere else, so they stay in our votes. They're on verify, but kind of, what is our registered voter? I mean, they, after a while, do be put on an inactive list. Which, so we can get a little better, number of how many registered voters do we really have. Right now, we're about 5,200.
Do we need to ask the question on the survey?
Do we need term limits?
Do we need to
That would be
change,
one
no,
question.
do we need term limits, or do we need to
Yes or
change
no?
what's already in here?
Yes, no, and then a big box for other. That actually is an interesting point, because how many of these, I know you're optimistic, but how many of these are we going to get back? And we're gonna get a better response if the questions are short and simple.
Yes.
Like, I'm already thinking people are gonna get this far in the survey and be like, close.
Yeah, too much, there's too much to think about.
And if I had a glass of wine and was doing a survey online, I'd be like, no, done,
I need more.
honestly, yeah.
So we could, if we do, do we need to continue with term limits, yes or no? If yes, then it ends there. If no, or would you like to see a change in the term limits, yes or no? And if yes, further, if no, just go to the next question. If yes, give them some mechanism for responding further, but,
Well, and it would be interesting too, and I don't know if we wanna do this, but to not even explain what the term limits are and just put that in there to see if they know. Cause honestly, I did not know.
No, and I'm on, usually it's a term limit of, I think two, I just think governors, two. Where I come from, it's two. And House can do whatever, Senate can do whatever, in the United States, but I think of two. Term limits, that's what I know.
I think the reason why we have 3 is because we don't have enough people that step up and.
Well, and they combined them.
yeah.
I mean, that's where the source of the whole confusion
Well-
is that they combine term limits into 2 separate offices. Which is strange to me.
It's just so hard to explain it.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make sense that that happened.
Well, I know they changed,
That's the whole thing, it's never been separated.
they
Yeah,
changed the terms
I
from,
want it to be separated. That's where I'm coming
You
from.
can do that.
I
They
think
changed it
that
from
should be
2 years
what
to
we
4
should
years.
do is separate them, because otherwise we're gonna kick around 100 ideas here.
Yeah, and they're gonna do this again in 10 years.
I would say we separate it and put it on there. Should term limits be set as, a city commissioner as 3 terms, yes or no? And then a separate question, should the mayor be set at 2 terms, yes or no?
But I think when you say terms, you need to know, they need to
4
let
years.
them know how many years.
Oh,
that is.
sure, 2 4-year terms,
So they know how many years that is.
3 4-year terms. And then see what the response is on that, to see if it's even something people want us to touch in here.
I wonder if the first question could be, should city commissioners and mayors, can we like, instead of telling them the way it is, can we ask them,
I don't know, can we? Does it make sense? I don't,
right? Like, and then go from there, how many terms should a mayor be able to serve consecutively? 1, 2, 3, 4. How many terms should a commissioner be allowed to serve consecutively? 1, 2, 3, 4. Should a commissioner who served term limits be allowed to run for mayor?
right,
I don't want that question.
yeah,
That
right,
muddies
right.
it.
well, we may have,
If-
I
if
think
you
we're
put
gonna have to
multiple
do this in
that combine
stages.
I understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
but you just said, don't give them too much information.
I think we're gonna
It's
have,
like 3 different questions, you know?
I think we may have to do this one in stages. We have to feel them out initially first about what they know about term limits, how they feel about term limits. we may have to do another, subsequent surveys or a focus group. I'm thinking we might have to do a focus group after we get survey results to maybe dig into a little. Because really, the question I want to know at the outset is, do you want us to mess with this at all?
Right, right, they're right. We could be doing a lot of work for people
We
who
could
don't
be-
want us to touch this
Yeah,
at all.
seriously. Okay.
So do we just wanna change that? Do we need term limits?
Yeah, we could pose that.
Kind of where I'm coming from, just
For
simplify
the first
it.
question, do you want to continue term limits for city commission and mayor together? We have to work on this one. So,
Is that a working draft?
I can't edit.
I don't think so. Okay, so do we want a question that just point blank? Like currently we have, our term limits are this, do we need to have term limits? Yes or no?
So the question would be, do we need to have term limits for commissioners and mayors? Because there are a lot of other boards that have term limits that it's not really, it's mostly a non-issue, right? Like, I don't think anybody really cares that much about term limits on the Parks Board.
Oh, right, right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I
Except
mean,
for
and
like-
we might adjust them within the state guidelines, and nobody's gonna be like, you let people serve an extra 2 years on the parks.
Right, well, that's mostly like if you have a complaint, come join the board, we have room
Exactly.
for a lot of the commission, a lot of the boards.
In fact, we might even like think about that with like the Parks Board, where we say if we can, you know, if there aren't sufficient, if someone leaving the Parks Board would prevent the board from having quorum, then they should continue on until their seat has been filled, even if it's passed.
And that's one of the, three of you are gonna be checking the statutes. Some of the statutes say you can,
Oh,
some
sure.
say you can't.
Sure.
And that's where this, Excel spreadsheet lists everything, so you know exactly where you can and can't do that. Yes, that would be a very good thing to have in place.
And it could even be that we then decide that, well, if we can't let someone sit on the Parks Board for longer than the existing term, because the existing term is already the state maximum, then maybe we should lower the terms so that the Parks Board or other boards were aware that they were gonna need to fill that seat. And so that person could then sit beyond the term that the city mandated while still being under the state mandate. Follow me?
There's no,
This is still the same amount of years. And we do look at these books really good. And like I said, right now, we're trying to put it on Facebook, the vacancies, but it's getting the interest indicators. I don't care whether they are extended or not. If you can't get the people to get on there, you
Well, I'm saying that we would be starting,
It's hard.
looking for the interest indicators. We would have a year grace period where the person could continue to serve in their capacity on the Parks Board, even though their term had ended, because the state would allow them to serve longer than what we mandated in the city charter.
right. We can do that already if people would just look. We can do that already without,
Yeah, I mean, we know that somebody's gonna be leaving.
Should we, I'm thinking if someone clicks on, I don't know, need more information, I'd like to know what information they need. Is there a way for us, I wonder if there's a way for us to,
we had
like
a comment box, you mean?
box.
I thought Anne had said anyone that responds with that, if they have their contact information, we would be able to reach up and follow up with people, like one-on-one
Okay.
type of thing.
So if we're gonna say, do we need to have term limits for city commissioners and mayors? Yes, no. If they click yes, should term limits be different for commissioners and mayors?
Yeah, I mean, that's the simplest way to start the conversation, right?
Just think, just yes, no, like a tree, if you hit yes, next question down.
Sure.
I don't know that, I actually just made a Google quiz the other day. I don't know that Google polls
have
and
flexibility.
quizzes lets you do the tree thing.
Oh, but you could say,
But
if you said yes, go to
can-
next question. I
Right,
mean,
you
yeah,
can
get around
do
it like that.
required questions and unrequired questions, but I don't think you can have a conditional where if they said this, then you require them. It would still be optional for them.
You put it in the survey and you say yes, go to the next question, say, whatever, and you say, no, go to.
Yeah. So long as they follow the directions, it works.
Well, yeah, that,
at this point, we just wanted to finish the survey. I'm worried we're gonna lose
Yes.
people right here.
Yeah, too much verbiage. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Take that one to Ann, see if we can get together and work on that one. This is the resign to run thing.
Oh, yeah.
well, because people are able to stay in their job and still run for something else in the country. You know, I mean, we had people running for president and they were governors of a state. And they didn't have to resign.
Well,
So-
there are only 5 states in the nation right now that have resigned to run laws.
I just think we don't have the pool of people running, so we want to encourage people to run, right? So if we're making them resign, we might lose some good candidates. But we can still put it on the survey.
It's not a question, I don't think we're asking this question because we want to do this.
Right.
We're asking this question because,
Transparent.
well, someone suggested that this is something that people consider. That's not on this commission. So I'm good with that question being there. I think that it's clear enough. It's really not that long of a survey. It's, the
No, it's not.
questions are long, but there aren't a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I probably spent more time filling out a survey on NPR's Through Line last night than I would
It
on this.
depends on my
Last
momentum,
question.
man.
Yeah, I think there's only three questions on here, basically. Right?
It's just the one is confusing.
And all the preliminary stuff. Okay. Okay, very good. Thank you all for your input on that. I will, let's communicate with Ann, see how we can revise that to simplify it. Ideally, I would like for us to be getting this up before our next meeting in November.
Yeah.
So what I would like, depending on, Ann's health and how she's doing, if possible, if we can get those revisions made and shoot them out to you to take a look at and give us feedback through email. And what I would suggest, Jim, there's something called the Open Meetings Act, which governs commissions like this. And effectively what it means is, our meetings are open to the public. And now in the world of technology, this also governs the fact that we cannot talk as a group on email
Because it wouldn't be open to the
because it wouldn't be open to the public. So I say that in preface to say, once you've had a chance to look at it, I would just say shoot an email back to Tammy individually, and she can collect them, okay? So that we're in compliance, all that good stuff. It is not prohibited if any one of you, or any two of you want to talk to each other, that's fine, as long as you're not talking to a quorum. That's 5 out of the 7, or actually 5 out of the 8.
So if you get an email, don't click reply all. And it becomes a discussion.
I think that specifically, you could reply all, you can't reply all with comments that pertain to Charter Revision Commission work.
Okay,
So
but
you could reply all and say, I look forward to talking about this at the next meeting.
right.
Well, you're not talking business, but
Yeah.
it's very easy when Tammy sends out the group mails.
Right.
She's asking questions, it's very easy to hit that reply all without thinking about it. I've done that a time or two and had to be reminded myself. Anyway, okay, let's do that. And hopefully we will be able to get this up by our next meeting, which is November 13th. Okay? I need to talk with Ann about this, but she didn't say anything. Once it's up, ordinarily you have a deadline for getting replies in. So I don't know, usually, a month is usually probably
I think that would be the
Generous.
maximum,
generous.
yeah.
I'm thinking again, where we live, and who's likely to be responding to this or not.
Yeah. If we
So,
don't get the responses within 2 weeks,
yeah,
it's not gonna drastically change. We might get a few extras.
If we put it out into holiday seasons, you're not gonna get replies to that, people get too busy.
that's a good point too.
I don't know, I
That's a
mean,
good point.
it's like, you know, a lot of people have Thanksgiving off. Like, I'm much more
Right.
likely to respond to a survey when I'm not at work.
Yeah, there's no
So,
reason for us
like,
to not be able to launch it again at a later date as well,
Yeah.
like a second go
Or with
round,
more
because that's actually,
questions.
you know, in survey research, that's what you do. You put it out, you see what kind of response you get back, then chances are good that you wanna recoup, kind of reach the people who didn't respond the first time, so you send it out again. And in the meantime, you know, if people will, first of all, you know, take a bunch of bookmarks if you can, pass them out at your workplace if that's permissible, pass them out to people you know. The QR code on this. We have, what is the charter? We need your input. The QR code is the same on both sides. It takes you to our website. And the survey link is on the left. The more people we make aware of it, I'm hoping that will help increase it. Just, like, please, 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 please. Okay. Any questions on that? All right. Okay, we're gonna move the process check down after new business. Getting going, finishing chapter 7. What you have in front of you are the questions and comments I sent forward to Tammy and she came back with some responses on. Obviously, I want to hear anything that you folks have in terms of questions or comments. Item 7.2. I think it's pretty straightforward. This is, I believe, the statement that we all agreed on. So just kind of running past everyone one more time, the city commission shall provide for the compilation or codification of the charter and also the ordinances at least annually. Does that sound good to everyone? Y'all with me?
Aye.
Yep.
Present.
Okay. Under chapter 8, the budget, you see the changes that I believe we made. This is what's reflected in what we talked about, yeah, Stacy? Correct? Chapter 8,
Are we moving out of chapter 7?
I'm sorry, did you have anything else?
Yes.
Oh, I beg your
I don't
pardon.
know, I just,
I'm just steamrolling along here.
Yeah,
Okay.
710B. I would like to change that to, most recent gubernatorial election. During the marijuana, thing, 102 people changed the decision of the commission. And 102 people signed that petition to move it to the voting. I think that number's too low. It's tied to the mayoral election. 800 votes were cast when there was 2 candidates. Historically, it's lower than that. Historically, it's 500, 600. That's just too low. The bar is too low to do it.
You're talking about the 25%?
25%, yeah, of votes cast
Yeah,
for the mayor.
Yeah.
You know, there's nobody, most of the time, there's nobody running against it, and people don't even check that box, you know. We just don't get the turnout because mayor is off-cycle election. So I think it should be tied to the gubernatorial election, the presidential election. Gubernatorial is probably the best one. because it's just too low. Right now, I could make the city council wear clown suits. I could file a petition saying the city commission must wear clown suits. They can either do it, or,
Put it to the
put
vote.
it to a vote, at the next election, so that they can't do anything, without it going to a vote, and I think the bar is too low.
Is there anything preventing us from changing that?
You know, I've looked at, like, I think it was Cedar Springs, they tie it to gubernatorial, Grand Rapids ties it to the gubernatorial, and I just think I like the idea of the citizens being able to change things, but that bar's too low to stop the
We
election.
need more signatures than what they're required to now.
Well, can I play the devil's advocate?
Yeah.
I mean, like,
As always.
I was gonna say, that's new.
I mean, why do you think it's too low? Like, what harm is there in putting it to the vote to the people that the city commission has to wear clown suits?
Because, already knew that everybody in the city didn't want to wear clown suits.
I don't know that.
You knew it, especially on the marijuana thing, it was pretty much 3-1, or 2-1?
It wasn't a
A
lot.
lot.
I mean, I think that was a perfect example of like, it worked. Somebody thought that the majority of people in town weren't gonna support the marijuana thing. They got the right necessary number of votes.
It's
and
too
it-
low.
And it failed. And that's okay.
It's too low. They had to get 102, and I think they got 125 signatures, all they got.
My only concern about that, making that kind of change, is that I think the section is written to be reflective of city circumstances as opposed to state circumstances. Well, it's an initiative or referendum on an ordinance enacted by the city commission. These are city laws. They're not statewide laws.
It's, I can start a ordinance, requesting an ordinance by doing a petition too.
Mhm.
Clown suits.
I kinda want you to.
I do too.
Well, the city's
I might
getting
do
ready to spend money on fire department, taking over the fire department of Big Rapids Township. I could start a petition on that, get 200 and, I think it's right at 200. I think Karen said there was 804 votes cast for mayor. So I could get a petition going saying that we don't want to do that. I'd have to get 200 people. I could easily get 200 people. I can go out and find 200 people that are pissed off at the city on just about any given day. You hit the bars, and,
Thank you for sharing that.
yeah.
I don't think
I
that's
mean,
true.
like, I'm just questioning, like, what's your concern here? That the city's wasting resources on elections?
Yeah, that's one
I
thing.
mean, this wouldn't, when you put together a proposal and you get the signatures, the election's gonna happen whether or not somebody has a referendum or not. It says that the commission puts it to a vote, that vote would happen at the next election, which we were gonna have anyway. We were already gonna have ballots. I don't know that it's that difficult to add one referendum onto a ballot. I don't know that that's really costing us any significant amount of money. We already have staff that are charged with doing the election, and the amount of ink
Got a
seems,
special election
Right.
for that
right,
proposal. You'd go on the next scheduled election.
yeah, which we were gonna have anyway.
And once a referendum has failed, that cannot be refiled for 2 years
The same one.
on the same issue. 'Cause, the marijuana one, they had to wait.
Yeah, you couldn't bring that up
So we
again.
were already 2 years into implementing the laws and so forth when they put that referendum through, and it lost by the same amount, the same number of votes that the initial decision did. So Brian, my understanding, your concern is that because there are so few votes in the mayor's election, that
Right.
25% of that is too few.
It's too low, the bar is too
Can
low.
we change the percentage? Are we allowed to change the percentage?
Could do that.
I'm not sure about these legal questions, I don't know.
You're not. Come on, Ted. Don't you know everything. Okay.
I mean, personally, I guess I would favor it being easier for people to put together a referendum or a petition than harder. I don't see very many people doing it. The only example I can think of is the one that you cited,
Yeah.
which I remember my memory of that, like, it wasn't 100% clear to me that it was gonna fail. I hoped it would fail, but I don't know, there are a lot of conservative people around town, you know?
Most of the people that I saw in this meeting for the marijuana, they weren't from any town.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but like, you know, like, it doesn't seem like it hurt
city
anything.
residents. I mean,
My biggest concern was that, like, oh man, like, if this passes, it's not gonna be beneficial to the community and we're gonna have to wait 2 years. But like, that's democracy, right? Like, if the
But
people.
is it democracy when, you know, 102 people out of 5,000 registered voters can make that decision? Is that democracy?
Well, I mean,
That's a function of how many people voted for the mayor. That's a whole nother question.
it's not,
Sad.
they didn't get to choose whether or not the law passed. They got to choose whether or not we would vote on it. And it's democracy that we voted on it. I mean,
Then
I
is,
hear what you're saying, and I do think that there are legitimate concerns. I just think that it's worth weighing the downsides along with the upsides, right? It's like the downside is that we make our commissioners show up in clown suits and they look like a joke. But the upside is that we're not raising the bar to the point that when people actually care about something, it's so hard for them to get it onto the ballot. Just
Because it won't always be a marijuana initiative, it might be something
boring. But still, yeah, but but it could be not exciting, and it's hard to get
Yeah.
it's hard to talk to people. It takes a long time to go around and gather signatures, and if you work a full-time job, like, and it's not something that people are passionate about, it could be difficult to get those signatures.
I could walk around my neighborhood and get 100 signatures in a day.
But again, that just puts it on the ballot, right? So we're just voting on it. I don't see the harm in that.
Or it cancels an ordinance that the city has done.
Okay.
It's not just to create one. Every ordinance, I can go up and do a petition to get every ordinance that's on the books, off the books.
Well, I've been here 19 years and I've only seen it happen twice.
Somebody put a petition.
someone challenges it.
Yeah.
One was for some kind of a zoning for landlord owners and the marijuana. That's the only two I've ever seen.
Can I ask, what was
Well,
the
as it says here in seven,
To sell it or not, you know,
It was to like back out of the legal sale
Yeah, they
inside
would-
city limits because
opt out of
when
having
the
it.
law went into effect, cities had and county or cities and townships had to opt out of legal sales, so you were default in. And then a lot of places opted out, and because a lot of places opted out, the few places that didn't opt out ended up becoming marijuana hotspots because people wanted to open stores, but they couldn't in most places, and so anywhere where you could, they flocked to, and Big Rapids was one of those places, and so after 2 years, people that were opposed to marijuana thought that our town is being overrun by marijuana and all these shops, and let's kick them out, and that failed.
I don't feel that way as a person who lives in town though, and I was hesitant for that to happen. So I don't know that it was necessarily a bad thing, and we're getting money that's getting back into the
That's what I was
community
thinking,
from
I
it,
mean,
too.
the
We have
money that you're getting.
buildings.
Yeah, yeah, and they're redoing some of the buildings that were,
The money that is going to the city from the sale of this is astronomical.
Substantial.
I mean, it's,
Yeah.
Yeah,
substantial.
we've gotten less and less. I mean, it's now evened out.
yeah, it fluctuates, and I mean, you've got shops open and they
but it
close.
hasn't increased crime. It hasn't, you know, all the stuff that we were worried about happening.
It never did in any of the other states that went through it. But we had to sit here and listen to them guys say that, it don't be the first duck in the pond.
Oh,
Shut my ass.
But we are, we still are the first, but still the townships still haven't opened up. Well, Barrington is, but I don't know about any other ones.
the point, the point of having a charter goes back to our being a home rule city. And that it is a document that gives us an opportunity for self-rule, basically. And I think that regardless of the number of signatures on a petition, the petitioner still has to go through the whole process of collecting the signatures. They have to get verified. They have to go around and do the work of trying to persuade people to their point of view, whatever that happens to
They have to
be.
get their wording approved.
And
by
That's a really important point, because in the marijuana example, the wording actually, original wording that they had signatures for wasn't legit, and they had to go
Wasn't legit,
back and get more signatures and do it again.
that's right.
So it's like there are other
Not an easy
bars that
process.
people have to clear other than just the number
an
of
easy
signatures.
And the commission has, as you see in 7.11, they have 3 directions they can go, depending on what that petition is about. They can either accept the ordinance as submitted, they can repeal the ordinance by referendary petition, or they can send it to the voters.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that to speak to Brian's concern, I mean, that it is slightly concerning that, let's say, a mayor, just any mayor, decided, they didn't like some ordinance or whatever, right? And they get somebody their friend to go around and gather these signatures, right? And they get enough and it's all cleared, and then they just approve it. They're like,
No, can't do
yep.
that.
I mean,
Well, it has to be 3/5, no, 4/5 ordinances.
Yeah.
Vote on commission
But, I
has to be
mean-
4 out of 5.
I'm just saying that if
If you put it at the mayor's thing, and it's, you've only got 100 people to come out, and the mayor knows 90 people, so, he can make whatever.
And if the mayor and the rest of the commissioners, let's just pretend
Yeah,
they're
any of those
corrupt as hell,
possibilities can happen depending
right?
on who makes up the
And
commission.
I'm like, in theory, a low bar means that they could approve as corrupt officials something that benefited themselves with very few signatures, right? I mean, that's a much bigger concern to me than just repealing laws because, the people voted on it and didn't understand what they were voting on or signing for.
Okay, as unofficial, yay or nay?
Maybe-
Is it a
Yay
concern?
to change or nay to, like, what's the yay nay?
Should we change it? Am I overly concerned? Yes or no?
I don't think you are.
I don't think that you're overly concerned, I just don't have an answer. I think maybe this is a survey question.
I'm okay with it. After
You're
this
okay with it?
discussion, I feel okay leaving it. That's where I landed. I see both sides.
I'm okay with it.
You're okay? You're okay?
I'm okay with it.
Stacy?
I'm okay with it as is.
4 and 3.
Tammy remains neutral.
As she should.
I mean, I could see if somebody every month was coming in and wanting to do something, but 2 in 19 years.
And I do like an active community that's doing, that it would be an attainable goal for them to go out and do this. I kind of do like that. Just because participation seems so.
I mean, it's like if
But I see your point. I absolutely do.
if we do the clown suit thing, then maybe people will change their
I really
mind.
do want to do that now.
I know.
Brian.
I'm like,
You can,
what other good ideas do you
Yeah,
have?
what else you got? What else is twirling up there? I need to know.
Have a whole stack of
What
things.
kind of clown are we talking about? Are we talking about Bozo, or are we
I
talking
think they're gonna have
about
to be scary clowns.
Scary clowns. It's Halloween.
Yeah,
It clowns.
Oh, okay.
is that it? Is that the one?
That seems less
Are we
festive.
gonna make them put on face paint, or is a mask gonna
Oh,
be
yeah.
acceptable? Because the face paint's gonna take a lot of time.
It's not my problem.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Stacey, can we go to 7.10E? We didn't change anything, did we? Okay. Because, that was one of your questions,
you,
Jennifer.
Well, you-
with the
Yeah, I thought you wanted to strike that sentence, the person shall then
I was
have
going
15
to, but
days.
then on here, it said upon further reading this, I think it should be left the way it is, because I was reading it wrong. The reason a person wants a topic voted on by the people, the process is, the person has to go to 7.10 and follow A, B, C, D, and E. After E is when it's decided on what election this wording would be on. I was thinking you wouldn't have enough time between getting the signatures, getting them, registered with us, getting them finalized to get on an election, but you don't decide what election you're gonna be on until all of that. That does give you, I was thinking it doesn't give you enough time, but it does. So if everybody, says, okay, we're gonna start it right now, obviously we know it's not gonna get on the November election. It would most likely get on in May, and if we didn't get it down in time, it would be on the November, it'd just have to be kicked. I was thinking it wasn't giving them enough time, but it is, because you're not gonna determine what election it is until after all this process is done. So I think
Alrighty
we
then.
should give us enough time to certify the signatures and the person enough time to get more if they need to.
Is there anything else in chapter 7?
At 7.12,
Yeah, that's
replacing
just-
in with the at.
Right, at the discretion of the city commission.
In 7.13, it says that the city commission may not amend or repeal for a period of 2 years. I was just wondering, do we think that 2 years is the right amount of time? Well, I mean, I think it's worth, it seems like this is one of those things where it's like, it's worth having 5 minutes of thought, like, is there any advantage to making it longer? Or, I can't imagine shorter, but like, why is it 2 years? Is there a logic to this?
I
Is
think
there a
there might
study that tells us?
I think there might be, because in B, it says the most recent general municipal election. Municipal elections are done every 2 years.
Yeah, that's right.
So you wouldn't even be able to have this on there for another 2 years because the election doesn't even come up for another 2 years.
So it's the minimum.
A municipal election does that, it's every 2 years.
So it's the minimum is what we're at right now.
Every odd year, you get a municipal election. So you wouldn't be able to do it less than that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. 2 years is the minimum amount of time that we could wait. So,
If you're gonna
I
do it
mean,
at that election.
like, for example, like the marijuana thing, like, if we had to go through that every 2 years, like,
Well,
that's
if we get 25% of the people to sign,
every 2
what
years.
happen?
I know, and you'd think like, well, who would keep signing it? It keeps failing, but some people are very,
So persistent.
yeah.
I'm kind of
And some
surprised the
people don't
marijuana
remember.
didn't
That would be me.
rear its head in 2 years.
I mean, it didn't happen, so I'm like, maybe it's moot, but
I feel okay with 2 years.
okay. I think that, that sentence, the city commission may not amend, should be a new paragraph. 7.13.
Separate it, make it clearer.
Yeah, it just seems like the beginning sentence is not directly relevant to the following sentence, so one is certification and the other one is amendments. I don't think that it needs to be 7.13A or something, or, but,
When we go through doing the wordsmithing and the
Yeah.
grammatical checking, we can do that.
the
Okay.
only other thing was I thought that 7.15 seemed like it would be better at the beginning than at the end.
Can anybody explain to me 7.14? I've read that several times and either I'm just really dense or I just have no idea.
Yeah, so I read it as, let's say one ordinance said that all dogs have to be on a leash of 6 feet. And another one that we were also voting on said dogs cannot be on a leash. And they both pass. The one that had the more votes is the one that actually is enforced.
But if it's an ordinance, they all have the same amount of votes, because city commission 5 and 5. We very rarely have no
It says
vote.
at
I
election.
think we're back to, from a petition,
Yeah,
during the same election, adopted at the same election.
Oh, okay.
yeah, this is to the
Okay,
people,
there we go.
not the commission.
Okay, there's where I was getting it, right there, okay. Same
It's the election, not the
election, then the one with the most votes.
Right, so if if
Okay.
500 people voted for people having their dogs on six-foot
Okay.
leashes and 300 voted for no leashes, then the no leashes one would be the one that we didn't go
I wasn't looking at election. There we go. That makes sense.
I'd love to see an example of
Why
that,
would you have
Yeah.
two ordinances on a ballot that have conflicting?
because one person,
That's rhetorical.
I was gonna say, you're gonna get Brian in this
because,
conversation.
because
It's gonna go through the neighborhood.
I'm
He's
gonna go
get
get
involved.
102 people to sign 2 elections that contradict each other, completely
I
contradict.
would be a part of that social study. If you want me to take that other petition, I'll
That
go.
would be legal.
I
Love to
think
see
the
how that would play
idea,
out.
This commission is starting to foment a coup here.
I think the idea would be that, so the marijuana referendum, right? Like, somebody might have said, screw this referendum, I'm gonna write a referendum that's the opposite, that says that you can't even have this referendum, or whatever, right? Because they're so angry that this is even going to the people, that they want, like, an opposite one, and so
Yeah, I
now there's a
think it's gonna be something
competition.
more subtle, like marijuana can come in and sell 10 ounces of weed, and then someone else will say they can come in, but they can only sell 8 ounces. You know what I mean?
That could happen, but I'm thinking the reason why it's in the charter is so that people, if they oppose a referendum, they can offer a counter to that referendum
Okay,
that people can vote for.
sure.
I don't see it happening.
Right.
We've only ever had, like Tammy said, 2, and
16, 19 years, you said?
19
Yeah.
years.
But I,
It just makes me wanna do stuff.
and it makes me
But I'm
wonder
really
if,
lazy,
like,
so I won't.
if we went back further, if there were a greater frequency,
No.
Probably.
or if it's been consistent for all of Big Rapids history.
Right?
Okay, you good to move on?
Yeah.
I love how you people are thinking, I really do. Chapter 8. Of course, we did go through with Carla Staffen last time. Did we get a question, an answer to my question?
Yes.
Okay, I asked Tammy why somebody had struck the honor before the first Monday in March and honor before the first Monday in May, why that had been stricken out. Did you give us an answer?
yes, me and Carla, we discussed this one. Okay, last year, the city commission, the city budget is kind of goes hand in hand with the CIP process. So last year, Carla had a timeline for the budget. Well, the CIP didn't get voted on at the meeting it was supposed to get voted on. They postponed it
Okay.
to the next meeting, which now made her timeline go back. So if you set, this in stone, then that doesn't work. So what it says here, just let in, I think, the wording just to allow her to do her timeline, go by the timeline, and the same thing with the CIP. So if that happens again, you're not going against the chart. This kind of
So it's really giving her some flexibility.
Yes, it gives them
because you
flexibility.
don't know.
Right now, you're doing this, the second Monday in February. Well, it may not happen, which is exactly what happened last year. It didn't happen. So then, which puts the timeline off balance.
Are there any repercussions for, like, not following the charter? Like, what happens?
Well, this is the question.
I make it so that you can't.
This is the question to end all questions. Well, I guess my concern about this, and I understand where she's coming from, but kind of doing devil's advocate here. Let's say hypothetically, CIP just keeps getting pushed back, and then the budget keeps getting pushed back. And, our fiscal year ends on June 30th, right? The new one starts July 1, right? I'm a little concerned about the potential ripple effect of that if the departments are not held accountable. Why was the CIP delayed?
It was because of the board. Had
Planning
nothing to
board?
do with the department.
Planning board? Planning
Yes.
commission?
The planning commission tabled it. They postponed it, so it was.
Why?
Because apparently the department head was ill or whatever, couldn't be at that meeting. They didn't feel comfortable voting on it, so they postponed it. It was the board, it had nothing to do.
Yeah, I understand.
I mean, if they
It was
understood,
unforeseeable.
yeah, but like, if they understood the charter dictated that they were obligated to, then they shouldn't have done that. And so it goes back to the question of, what are the repercussions for not following the charter? Because I get why they did it, but they didn't have the right to.
I have this question on the front of my document here. Who is responsible for holding the city commission accountable or?
Not just commission.
The whole city government. That's a good, well, it's a good question.
But what happens if they didn't have a quorum? Then they can't vote on it either.
And see,
Then they
this,
would need to hold an emergency meeting.
this gets back
I think they ended up doing that because they didn't wait a whole another month. You know, but it
Yeah.
just wasn't voted on.
And I get where you're coming from, I'm just,
February, you know.
I
I think
just,
it's a little too descriptive.
yeah, I understand.
Second Monday in February, it's like, really?
Yeah.
I understand the, you know, the need for flexibility. I am just concerned, I guess, my mind's going where Foster goes. Potential for abuse
that's,
of that, you know, where you just lose control of that
Yeah.
timeline altogether.
Because I think somewhere else in the charter, it states that the budget has to be done by.
Yeah.
And that one, if you don't change that one, then everything will
It
fall
all,
into
it
place.
all
Okay.
flows back from there.
Now, that's in here somewhere where it says it has to be in place by a certain, I think it's like, is the first meeting in June or? No, this is just all stuff
is
that
the,
leads up to it, but then there's also one that says it must be done by this. Because otherwise you have to have, you know, here to your July 1st. That's when the fiscal year starts.
This says, you know, that the budget plan needs to be presented to the city commission on or before the first Monday in May.
Yeah, well, 8.5, the city commission shall adopt a balanced budget for the next fiscal year by the first Monday in June. If you don't change that, then there's your accountability. It has to be done by the first Monday in June. So even if it got a little, you know, delayed a little bit, they still have to, like you said, do an emergency meeting or something.
Okay,
So it adheres to this one right here.
okay, that makes sense.
And I think that could also be part of the job description for the city treasurer. You have to have this to whoever by this date, and that's not necessarily something that needs to be in the charter, just a set expectation for that role.
Right, and she has, you know, her timeline, but her timeline is also mixed in with the CIP timeline and, you know, it's kind of like a domino effect. And if something happens over here, it's going to change over here. But you still have the June deadline, and that's it, we don't change that one.
I think it's worth pointing out that the June deadline is a deadline for the commission, and the March deadline that we're proposing we cut from 8.2 is the deadline not for the city commission, but for the planning commission to make the recommendations. I see the relevance of telling the planning commission explicitly in the charter that you've got to get this done before the commission deadline, right? Because the commission might take your recommendations and then they want to think about it for a couple of weeks or a month. And you can't meet the commission deadline and slap it on the commission's desk and say, here, you better approve it because you got one day. You follow me?
They would be
Yeah, no,
very
I
happy
follow
with that.
Like, I get that you still have the, you know, oversight in 8.5, but it's not directed at the planning commission there. I'm wondering, is there some way that we can,
Maybe when we get to the planning commission, there's a subsequent chapter, chapter 14. We can revisit that.
I'm thinking, can we tie the two together? Like, the planning commission has to, the city commission has to alert the planning commission of upcoming deadlines.
Well, your department head does that, it wouldn't be the city
You
commission,
know, get what I'm saying, is that like,
which of course she does do. I mean, they have meetings, they have the CIPs, they go through them, they tour all of the facilities to figure out where the CIPs are coming from. They have a whole big process. They just weren't, nobody could foresee that she would not be at that meeting and then they would take
Does everyone know what a CIP is?
do that.
That's our, what we call our capital improvement plans. which every department sits down, they go through the projects that are coming up this year, what kind of money they're gonna need, and that they are tasked with prioritizing it as a recommendation going forward. And that is a very lengthy process, and then there's a little committee made up of one plan board member and
I'm not sure.
I forget who the other two are, but it's a lengthy process. And the planning commission is ultimately they're the first stop. Where, they go through all of that and they need to kind of look through it with a fine tooth comb and be okay, and then they recommend it to the city commission and the city commission goes through that. So it's really about allocating funds for projects. And then, of course, Carla.
And that's how they start to build out their
becomes the
budget.
basis for her budget.
So, I mean, it occurs to me that if the reason why we were late last year was because one person was absent, it strikes me that that doesn't sound like very good planning if they waited until the very last possible meeting. Like, maybe they should have tried to address that before then.
I don't know if it was the last meeting, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It was just on that agenda to do it, and they didn't do it.
In any case, let's stick a pin in that and look at, like, when we get to chapter 14, think about that, adding that into the conversation, take a look at that. Okay, 8.5C, and I think this was Ann's question about the mills,
Oh, yeah,
is that right?
yep.
And we had a response back from Dan Kerwin, right, who is our tax assessor. And you should have a thing in your packet that says 8C on it, a big old 8C in the corner. Dan works for several cities and townships. All the cities he works for have the 15 mills in place. His opinion is that this should not be revised. He felt with all the other added mills that residents pay, he thinks the 15 is sufficient, and any more, people are gonna be upset, which is probably true.
Because there's more, I mean, they pay more mills than just this. I mean, there's proposals and schools and,
All manner of things, so. Hey, are there any questions on 8.5C, or 8.5?
Yeah, my question, it says the levy shall not exceed 15 mils.
Right.
And at the bottom it says, these limits shall not restrict the city commission's authority to impose additional millage. So can the city commission go over 15 mils if it's to pay the principal and interest on bonds approved by the electorate?
well, Dan said yes, he said, but then he says the residents,
He said what?
the residents will not be very happy.
The city's gonna riot.
So, I mean, why are we letting them,
Why are we letting them what?
why would we say these limits shall not restrict the city commission authority? It just seems like,
It might be a good reason why we have to, I
when
don't
I
know.
see language like the levy shall not exceed, that sounds like you will not, period. Like, and then it ends with unless they have a need to.
So there's
And I'm
get out-
like,
there's a get out of jail free card. with that.
yeah, I'm like, is it shall not or not?
It does say that it has to be approved by the electorate, so the city would have to vote, so it has to be something that the majority of people, or at least the majority of voters, are going to say, yes, let's spend the money on this, because it's important to us.
Like if your wastewater plant was totally gonna,
No, that's not what it says. It
it's gonna
says,
go to the vote of the people.
it says that the city commission has the authority to impose it to pay principal and interest on bonds approved by the electorate. So the electorate approved the principal and interest bonds,
Right, right.
but not the additional millage to pay for them.
Could you ask Carla if she can give us an example
Yeah.
of a time when the
That one?
city did that?
Yeah.
Or actually Dan, I'll ask Dan.
Or ask Dan, because I'd like to know, that language is very vague, I'd like to
I
know.
agree with you. God damn it, if they would say that.
Got one!
That was
I like
awesome.
that one.
Like a dip like in a blue or something. So I can- What is our color code at the top?
I think yellow is the
Yellow?
stuff we were
Okay.
questioning.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on 8.5? Or anything else in chapter 8? Eight point 10 we already did. Adjusting for inflation.
Oh, yeah, that was a fun one.
Right? Okay. Anything else on chapter 8? Alrighty then. Chapter 9. Taxation. The only question I had, which you see in the packet, had to do with the Board of Review. We asked, when Tammy and I met, I don't know how long ago that was now, months and months ago, whether the 5 city residents had to be, the 5 board members had to be residents of the city, and we did discover that through the state statutes, yes, they did. So that was a question that was answered. Tammy raised, I think, a question here, or a comment that with respect to the last sentence in 9.3 in the Board of Review, the mayor, with the consent of the city commission, may remove any member of the board of review for misconduct or neglect of duty. Her suggestion here is it needs to be consistent with how other board members are removed.
Unless the statute's got something to where it says specifically, you know, this wording, but I mean, we have other boards that there's a process in how to remove them, and it seems to me they should all be consistent.
So I think that's maybe a wordsmithing
Yeah.
issue where we just, when we go through the whole document, we need to make sure it's consistent across any boards that don't have something otherwise indicated. Okay? So that's good. Are there any other questions in the tax section? No, anything at all?
In 9.7, it says the assessor shall spread upon the approved assessment. Like spread? Is that the right word? What is that? I mean, is this a word that is an assessment that I don't understand?
The amounts determined by the city to be charged? I know, but can we ask Dan, is that a tax, is that tax terminology?
I just think it could be clearer or different.
That's-
For retired people.
That's a very interesting question.
In creative writing, the note that you make is WC, word choice.
Yes.
Closet.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, you spread the amounts determined by the city across different categories. The way it's written, it's interrupted.
It makes me think spreadsheet or something, or
Yeah.
butter.
Or jam or something. Okay, we'll check the language on that one. You discover all kinds of vocabulary associated with all the different parts of government. Get some clarification from him. How many days a week is Dan?
Thursday and Friday.
All righty. Any other questions on chapter 9? Very good. Chapter 10, a little bitty one, borrowing power. Did anyone have any comments or questions about the material in chapter 10?
Yeah.
My note is, huh?
Yeah, I know, about halfway through, I'm reading it and I'm
I
saying.
feel
I
like
gotta
we
go
have no
back and read it
business in
again.
here.
I have no idea what any of that means.
We have no business touching this section.
Probably
Without some
not.
Direction.
Yeah, a little gobbledygooky.
That was my only note, was 10.2. I don't know, I don't get this. Like, I think I might kind of understand what they're saying, but I don't.
It'd be like the Ives drain, I believe. They can borrow money to
feel
do Ives drain and then assess the people that live in that area to pay it off over time.
I feel like Stacy,
That's the way I read it.
she can help us if we need to fix stuff.
I would just like it to be a little bit, it's fine if there's some gobbledygook that has to be in there, but it would be nice if the layperson could understand what the hell it was talking about.
I'm not touching it.
I'm like, if we can just get a legal synopsis.
Something on that and put it in the AI and say simplify this.
On 10.2.
I wonder if that,
I wonder what they would say.
I'm curious.
Can you,
Well, it's, you
like,
know,
put it in like,
it's written in
in English?
assessor ease.
okay, and so you want like a summary of plain English?
Yeah.
Cliff notes of what,
Yeah.
talk to us like we're
The cheat
five.
sheet, yes, yeah,
Okay,
if that's possible.
right, I've talked to Dan.
Well, this is his business.
We found
after all.
those graphs and stuff and it's going, oh, I was following pretty good and then here comes the phone.
Well, I think,
Okay.
Tell 'em that you only understand English.
the Ives drain is a good example.
Yeah.
of that.
But the Ives drain actually was from the drain commissioner, not from the city. The city didn't assess it, I
No.
think the Ives
No,
commissioner.
that's true.
What is, Mechanic Park?
Mechanic Street,
Main Street?
the Mechanic Street development.
Do a bond on that to pay for that? I mean, it's just a process, a project that needs to be done. Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
You know, right now we're looking at bonds for the wastewater treatment plant. I mean, there's,
I'm wondering if Dan might give us an example. Of, you know, special assessment bonds. Just give us an example on how that works.
Chapter 11's confusing in similar ways.
Yes. The whole section's confusing.
Great.
I find
Only
it.
2 sections.
Yeah, my only note on section 11 is what are special assessments?
Sidewalks?
yeah, we used to have special assessments on sidewalks. We would, go around and see if people have broken sidewalks in front of their home. If they did, the city would have a public forum and say, okay, you know, you people are going to be, we're looking at your sidewalks. And they would come in and say, yep, they want to, yep, they don't want to, or if they're very opposed to it, or if someone says, I want my sidewalk done, because it's got a big hole in it. Okay, then we would fix it. The city would pay 50% of doing it, and the resident would pay 50% to fix the sidewalks in front of their home. And we've done that for years.
Assessed over 3 years, or something like that?
Yeah, something like that, yeah. We've done that for years.
Would that be also
Last
if
couple-
you're putting in sidewalks where there are none?
No,
That's different.
no. And this is where it kind of was different. We always put in brand-new sidewalks just to put them in. But then if they needed repairs, then it would be 50-50. The last couple, I think it was about 2 years ago, we eliminated the sidewalk, 50-50, and the city just pays for it. And I do remember on Pierre Marquette, the street was paved, and I had an assessment. I had to help pay for the street. I don't believe we do that anymore either, so I don't remember.
Didn't we do that for paving the alleys? Special assessments?
Yeah.
50/50? I wanna think we did.
Could be.
I wanna think we did.
Yeah, I think we did. But I know the sidewalk has gone away. I don't remember any assessments for the,
Sidewalk. Who do you talk to about addressing the sidewalk?
Cody. Yep, in Public Works, Cody. Cody or Matt. So Cody goes out every fall, determines where the problem places are, and then in the spring, we do a bid and we get it. So many per year. We have so much money budgeted to do. That's what a special assessment is.
The whole chapter 11 is about special assessments. All two sections of it.
Glad that's all there is.
Yes, thank you. Okay, anything else on, any other questions that you may want to pose to Mr. Kerwin about chapter 9, or 10 rather? Bonds, special assessment bonds.
I think the same thing with special assessments as with 10.2. It would be nice if maybe there was like 11.0. This is what a special assessments are. Like as I'm guessing if I'm not making clear sense of it, that like the average citizen isn't either. Like if you don't know what a special assessment is, you just don't have any context to understand it. So I wouldn't want a lot, but like one or two sentences.
Yes, if Dan can.
So we need one for the borrowing power, chapter 10, bonds,
Yeah, special assessment bonds.
special assessment bonds. One on 11 for special assessments. Yeah, I think that's a wonderful idea.
I mean, it seems like, what's the point of having a charter that's made public if the public can't understand it?
Yeah.
When people go get their taxes done by professionals, the tax code.
Well, you know,
That's what got me into this.
Stacy knows this. I am in grad school. I knew one of my classmates was a law professor, and she was like every semester, she was keeping up one semester ahead of her class because the tax laws changed
Oh,
so frequently. I was like, if you all don't understand it, what do you expect us to be? I'm just saying. But it's you know, legal stuff, governmental stuff, it gets kind of into the weeds. All right. I think that's where we stop for chapters. This time around, eh? Okay. Well, we are learning a lot. Since we have no member of the public available, I assume there's no public comment.
I'm laughing because last time was just so exciting when people kept coming in. I'm like, wow.
Okay, I wanted to do a little process check
Oh yeah, the process check.
with you folks. First of all, we're a tiny bit behind our timeline. So I'm thinking for, you know, our next meeting, which is November 14th, we can do chapters 11, 12, and 13. As we pointed out, chapter 11 is 2 little sections. That will, I believe, bring us up to where we start talking about the boards. Chapter 14, then what I'm thinking is if we move to, get through those in our November meeting, our December meeting, I'm thinking chapters 14 and 15, which is the two biggest ones, I think, the planning board and the library board. And I'm gonna try and get, you know, Brian and Ann and I are gonna try and figure out a time to meet and go over the board material before
When are we going to do that?
the boards, starting our December meeting.
So you're gonna do December, you're gonna do, which one?
14 and 15, which is the planning commission and library board. And then I'm anticipating, the remaining chapters are fairly small, and so I'm thinking ambitiously in January to go 16, 17, 18, 19.
That'd be really good for us.
Which wouldn't put it too terribly far behind. Our goal was to kind of get through the initial review of all the chapters by the end of the year or beginning of the next year at the very latest, and then spending about 6 months refining, going back at places where we need to tweak and refining it before we send it off to Lansing. Okay, that's the timeline. I'm thinking, you know, in terms of our meeting process, I would really like, if you can, knowing what chapters we're going to be looking at, take some time to read them, and if you have questions, much as I do with Tammy, here's what my questions on these chapters, send them forward in writing a week prior to a meeting, to give her time to just collate them, and that way as well, if we need someone with expertise to come in, we can give them the heads up and they are prepared to come and
They'd like to
talk.
know the questions so that they can,
Yeah, exactly so,
or if they can't come to me, at least I can forward them out.
exactly so.
So our next meeting is the 13th, so we should have questions to Tammy by the 6th.
Right. And same for any subsequent chapters that we're working on. Okay, I wanted, last but not least, this memo that I sent out to you folks. You should have gotten it with your packet. We're getting into some more meaty stuff. And I think we're finding as we go along this process that there's a lot more nuance to some of this stuff than we may have anticipated. But I'm thinking that it would be good for us to find a consultant who is really experienced in charter revision, who really knows state law. I was looking over the checklist that I received from the Attorney General's office. I mean, it's rather nuanced and it's legalistic and so forth. And I would like for us to be able to access someone who has a tremendous lot of experience in this field. Make sure that we're keeping on track and we're being guided as well as we can be guided. As I pointed out, this in no way disenfranchises the city attorney. His function is still very important as part of this process, most particularly because the city attorney is going to have to defend this in court if it ever comes up, if it's ever needed. The previous commission did this, they sent out questions, they received names from the Michigan Municipal League, and they sent out questions to people and got, I think, 3 responses back. I gave you examples of the questions that they asked. And of course, we need to know what these people would charge and how they calculate their charges. We need to look at our budget. My understanding was, of course, that if we do need to do a budget amendment, we are able to do that. We need to go in front of the city commission and make our case. But I wanted to throw that out to you and get your thoughts.
Good idea.
I actually have 2 names, that, one of which was highly recommended to me. And I'm happy, and Mr. Fowler has also said, he's happy to provide some names. I wanted to look for people who did not have ties to the city, just for really assure objectivity and so forth. So I have 2 names that I can be reaching out to immediately, if you're okay with that, and just send out these questions and get some responses back and find out what they charge and how they go about.
Sounds like a good plan.
Very good.
Is that something, like, is there anyone, if Brad Fowler doesn't currently have the knowledge and experience, does anyone at his firm have that knowledge and experience, though?
They do. My concern with that was that the firm is contracted with the city. So they have a contractual obligation. I'm looking for someone who does not have a connection to the city. So simply, the reason for that is very simple, and it's been explained to me by people in the know. It reduces or eliminates the possibility of any undue influence coming from members of city government through the city attorney, whether it's intended or not intended. It's just that there's a familiarity there, there's a contractual obligation there. And so the idea is to have someone objective who is not connected to the city.
That makes sense to me. I think that the questions that you posed seem like the straightforward questions. I don't know that we need to grill them too hard.
You did answer these questions. Okay, all right, if you're okay with this, then, I can go ahead and start, get started on this and see what I can come up with and, what you report back to you. Is that okay?
Yes.
Alright. Just before we leave, Tam, provided us, at the very end of this, the general appropriations for the city, the various funds, as you can see, and there are bazillion funds.
Yes.
It gives you a whole new appreciation for what Carla's job is about.
And then the very back where it's highlighted, that's where the mills come from.
Yeah,
It was highlighted.
right, thank you.
And then Dan gave us that, where it says the city is already at 12.1.
12.23340. Yes. You know, the thing is, you know, of course, the city commission, obviously, you know, they are stewards of our tax money. And I know, you know, when you know, we took a hit, we took a big hit out of the budget because of the census numbers, which affected tremendously our percentage of revenue sharing from the state, which is based on population. Right? And so this is why, you know, the budget stuff, it's, especially if you're not financial minded in the first place, which I am not, but I had to learn how to think about this. But you can see the complexity of the process within city government. You know, you have departments needing to figure out their budgets. You have the CIPs. You have, you know, the various funds. You have basically what are three sources. You have three basic sources of income. You have the personal tax. You have blanking now, the income tax,
Property taxes.
the property tax. We had the revenue sharing as one piece of that pie. What's the third one? I'm forgetting. I'm blanking on it. Income tax. Income tax.
Tax and,
Income tax.
yeah.
Yeah. And of course, you know, the revenue sharing, like I said, you know, took a big hit. The decrease in population decreases our tax base. So all of these things factor into,
Don't we get money from the state?
that's the revenue sharing.
But it's very, not as much now. Based
The
on
census.
population.
Population's down, and that means fewer people have jobs, we're getting less income tax. Yeah.
I'm curious, do we see a population decrease with income tax? Because people say the population is down, and I've always pushed back, I'm like, no, the census says the population is down. We don't actually know
Yeah,
that the
Because-
population is down. When you drive around Big Rapids, you don't see 30% of the houses vacant.
no, it's true.
So that leads me to believe that the census was not done very well.
No, it
Which
wasn't.
is not surprising.
It actually,
It wasn't just during COVID, it was put off because Trump wanted a citizen question on it. So they were delayed in putting the census out, and then they didn't have as much time to complete the census and do thorough checks to make sure that the census was carried out correctly. And many towns across the United States are in the position where we are, where it costs so
We
much
had no
money
students,
to
that's-
redo the census, that if you fail, then you're gonna blow everything that you had, and you're not gonna have trash pickup.
If it doesn't fail, you're not guaranteed the money. And the census was during COVID, unfortunately, where the students were at home.
they had already been
not
sent home.
But, and I know that, but I don't think,
The other part
this
of
is
that,
complicated too, because they say now that the students count, but there's no way that Ferris could have 10,000 undergrads on average, and the city of Big Rapids could have 10,000 residents on average, and our population, including Ferris, is now 7,000 people? That doesn't add up at all. We would have gone from 20,000 to 7,000.
We didn't, we went from 10,601, that was our population.
Because we have never counted the students.
Depends on the circumstances that they're living in.
Yeah.
Depends on how,
In general.
If they're, yeah,
depends on how everybody fills
Yeah.
out the form.
The other part of the problem was that there was not consistency across census takers. For example, when someone may have been home but they didn't answer their door,
Yeah.
it's considered a no answer or no or whatever. Right? So there
Yeah, I
was
was
not
not answering the
consistency.
door.
There were some census takers who were very diligent, and committed to the job, and then there were some who were not quite so diligent. So, all in all, yeah, it was not an exemplary example of census
Yeah.
taking. It's funny.
Yeah, no, freaking disaster.
yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna pay for it.
Not just us, the entire country.
Okay, I have no announcements. Anything good of the order? So let's get out of here and go
Let's
home.
end on a positive note.
On a positive note, meeting is adjourned and we'll see you on September 14th.
On a positive note, the meeting is adjourned. You
On a
may all go home.
on a positive note, we may all go home.
Now, I did